Hey everybody, so we already know that manufacturers love to boast about horsepower numbers, but the truth is that horsepower doesn't really matter unless you know the weight, and that gives us the power to weight ratio. That is truly going to determine whether a machine is quick or not. And in this video, I want to find out which machine in the power sports industry has the best power to weight. So I'm going to compare dirt bikes, snowmobiles, PWCs, ATVs, every single thing that goes off-road to see which has the best power to weight ratio. And we're going to start off with all the machines that I have around here. Let's get going. So let's start by looking at this Ranger Backcountry right here. So this thing makes 82 horsepower and it has a dry weight of 1,597 pounds. Now that is an important distinction. Dry weight means no fluid, no riders. Now most manufacturers list dry weight, some list dry and wet weight, some only wet weight, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to use the dry weights for everything just to make sure we're comparing apples to apples, and if that is different, we will let you know. Anyways, this Ranger, 82 horsepower, just about 1,600 pounds. The power to weight ratio comes out to 0.51 horsepower per 10 pounds. So essentially half a horsepower for every 10 pounds of machine. So what's power to weight like on something like this Yamaha Kodiak 700 right here? So this machine makes 48 horsepower and it comes in with a wet weight, and that's because yes, Yamaha only lists the wet weight of 661 pounds. So if you take 48 and you divide it by 661 and then multiply by 10, we come up with 0.72 horsepower per every 10 pounds. So this little ATV has a better power to weight than that big Ranger, and this should probably stay true throughout the video, and maybe obviously, but the smaller the machine is, the less weight, the better the power to weight ratio is going to be. Now let's start comparing power to weight ratios. We are going to look at the 5 major power sports, those being ATVs, side-by-sides, personal watercraft, snowmobiles, and dirt bikes. Now for each one, we will list the top 2 vehicles when it comes to power to weight, and of course we will start with the worst power to weight ratios and build our way up to the best. Do you know what the best is? Why don't you take a guess right now in the comments below, and let's get started. The list kicks off with ATVs, which have some of the lowest power to weight ratios in power sports. First of all, we're going to look at the Yamaha Raptor 700. Now this is one of the last pure sport ATVs. It only makes 47 horsepower, but it also only has a wet weight of 422 pounds, bringing the power to weight ratio to 1.11 horsepower to every 10 pounds. But there is one machine that is even better, and that is the Can-Am Renegade SxS 1000R. This 976cc liquid-cooled V-twin makes 91 horsepower, while the dry weight of this ATV is listed at 710 pounds. That brings the ratio to 1.23 horsepower to every 10 pounds. Now on to ATV's big cousins, side-by-sides. These machines are cranking out crazy power these days, but of course they're pretty big, which also means that they are pretty heavy. The second best power to weight ratio in the category right now belongs to the Polaris RZR XP Turbo. Now, the XP Turbo S is actually the pinnacle of the RZR lineup, but the lesser turbo model weighs a little bit less, so it has a better power to weight. Now the XP Turbo weighs in at 1,487 pounds and it has a 168 horsepower engine, leaving it with a power to weight ratio of 1.13 horsepower to every 10 pounds. Dominating this segment is the brand new for 2020 Can-Am Maverick X3 XDS Turbo RR. Thanks to its Rotax 900cc turbocharged 3-cylinder engine, this Can-Am gets 195 horsepower, which has to propel 1,501 pounds, and that is a dry weight. That brings our power to weight ratio to 1.3 horsepower per 10 pounds. And here's one I wanted to throw in, kind of just for fun, the new Nikola NZT. Now the NZT is not on sale yet, but it is production intent, so we should see it starting in 2021. Now this all-electric side-by-side makes 590 horsepower, but there's a problem. The weight is listed at 5,250 pounds thanks to heavy batteries and that full cab. So what's the power to weight ratio? Slightly worse than the Polaris RZR at 1.12 horsepower per 10 pounds. Next up, right in the middle of the list at number 3 are dirt bikes. Now these are the lightest vehicles on the list by quite a large margin, but the horsepower just isn't that high, so the power to weight isn't better than 2 other types of machines. First, we have the Honda CRF 450R. This is one of the most powerful dirt bikes out there, making right around 60 horsepower from its 449cc single-cylinder engine. Weight for the 450R comes in at 247 pounds, and that includes a full tank of fuel. That means that this Honda has a power to weight ratio of 2.5 horsepower per 10 pounds. Now there is one bike that can best that Honda, and it's right here. This is the KTM 450 SxS with its 63 horsepower 449cc single cylinder engine and its 220.4 pound curb weight. Now that is also a wet weight, but that does not include a tank of fuel. Now the KTM just edges out the Honda, although with a tank of fuel they'd be pretty close. Either way, the KTM comes in at 2.8 horsepower per 10 pounds. Now it's time to hit the water and look at the world of personal watercraft, because yes, these are number 2 on the list when it comes to power to weight. First, the runner-up PWC is the Yamaha FX Cruiser SVHO, making 250 horsepower from a 1.8 liter 4-cylinder supercharged engine. Now this Yamaha weighs in at 820 pounds, so definitely a lot heavier than those dirt bikes, but it makes a lot more power. That means the power to weight ratio is 3.05 horsepower per 10 pounds. Now next is the PWC that doesn't have the highest power to weight ratio, but it does make the most horsepower, the Kawasaki Jetski Ultra 310R. Now it makes 310 horsepower, but it has a curb weight of 1,047 pounds, including fluids and a full tank of fuel. That brings the power to weight to 2.96 horsepower per 10 pounds. So even though Kawasaki claims the horsepower title, they are not the best when it comes to power to weight. And we get to the top of the PWC world. That is the Sea-Doo RXT X300, cranking out 300 horsepower from a 1,630cc supercharged engine. The dry weight of this unit clocks in at 828 pounds, and I recently had a chance to ride it, so I have some fresh footage of it right here, and I can tell you firsthand that this thing accelerates like very few other machines I've ever ridden. It's insane. The RXTX has a power to weight ratio of 3.62 horsepower per every 10 pounds. And I wonder if you saw this one coming. Finally, we arrive at snowmobiles, the best power to weight ratio bargains on the market. 2-stroke mountain sleds in particular shine, as these machines need to be light and massively powerful to climb into the mountain powder. First, we're looking at the Ski-Doo Summit X 154-inch with the Expert package. Now this machine makes 165 horsepower from its Rotax 850 E-Tech Twin, and it tips the scales at just 440 pounds dry. That brings the power to weight ratio here to 3.75 horsepower per every 10 pounds. But the winner of the snowmobile segment, and therefore this entire list, is right here. This is the Polaris PRO RMK. With right around 168 horsepower from its twin-cylinder 840cc engine, this feather-light 413-pound Polaris has an insane power-to-weight ratio and is the only machine on this list to crack the 4 mark. The RMK comes in at 4.07 horsepower per every 10 pounds. That's it for this list, guys. Did you see that one coming? I certainly did not. I thought that dirt bikes were going to have the best power to weight. So why don't you go below, leave a comment, let me know what you think of this list. Maybe you've ridden some of these, let me know what they're like. And then of course, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and come right back here to TFL Off-Road for the latest news, views, and real world reviews. See ya.